just as a bit of an introduction, my name is Richard Poole. I work in the School of Education and Sociology, and I'm the course leader for the one of the master's programs there, after our collaborative provision and degree apprenticeships. So part of my rationale, or part of my raison d'etre within the school, is I look after the distance learning master's program, and we have approximately 140 students on the program from countries around the world. So I've been looking after this program now for almost 18 months. So I come from a relatively fledgling position of experience in terms of working with distance learning programs and the benefits and the limitations that they have, really. So a bit of a caveat, sorry, excuse me, before I begin. There is absolutely, and I'm sure you'll agree with most things, there's no right or wrong answer of any of this. And this is just my perspective, my take, and some of the things that I found that have worked and some of the things that I found that haven't worked. So what I'd like to do today is, well, actually, I'm going to kick the presentation in earnest, if that's okay. You're going to have to forgive me slightly. I don't generally tend to use WebEx, so I just want to make sure we're in the right place with things. So hopefully, all being well, you should now see a picture of me in the corner and a slide and a screen. So I'd like to just ask a rhetorical question just to start, if that's okay. In terms of your experience, you know, if you think about online learning and a TV documentary, for example, a TV documentary can hold your attention, hold an audience's attention for an hour. But actually, why can't online lectures and videos hold student attention for more than the mythical 4 minutes that we have? So I don't want an answer, but I just want you to think about that. Think about a good documentary that you've seen, you know, that holds you, you know, engages you fully for a period of time. But actually, why can't we do that with our students? What's the issue there? So in terms of question there, in terms of the structure of the session, what I'd like to do is discuss a bit of the theory behind blended learning and distance learning and the sense of community. I won't spend a huge amount of time on that, but just to set the scene, really. And then look at what theory tells us we should do and what should work, but then give you a tangible example of a VLE structure that I've put in place and my team utilise that hopefully facilitates a distance learning community, an online community. So, what do we know about campus-based delivery? Now, you're all au fait with this, I'm sure, and some of the things that, in terms of a sense of community and that environment, that learning environment, is that we know that interaction is constant between us as teaching staff, as students, and with their peers as well. And because of that, they encounter feedback regularly. So there's constant feedback, and that's a key aspect which we'll come on to shortly. Not only do they have the opportunity for constant feedback, but also there's numerous opportunities for collaboration. Again, peer-to-peer, but also teacher staff to peer, and other stakeholders as well, like learning development tutors and librarians. And this, you know, interaction, this opportunity for collaboration enables relationships to be formed, which is, you know, as human beings within the sector of education, for me, this is paramount. And because of these relationships, you know, a community is present. You know, students have an identity; they are part of a community, and therefore, learning is much more amiable and can occur in a more straightforward and traditional fashion. We all know that. So how does this differ from distance learning? Well, there are pedagogical differences in terms of delivering taught material online at a distance when compared with campus-based delivery. And actually what happens is this can be a lonely place for students. The DL can be a lonely place. And universities need to create high quality digital content suitable expressing learning in an efficacious way for an online material for these students. Because otherwise, a lack of interaction can lead to a lower sense of community, and the perception of learning is less. You know, there's research by Moore in 2014 that discovered although students were actually learning as much in terms of outcomes, when compared to campus-based learning, the distance learning students perceived that their learning was less, which is not where we need to be. And validation of learning is key. You know, this is developing a sense of community. You know, is a challenge because human interactions are limited, and prominence needs to be placed on reducing any feelings of isolation or any feelings of distance. And without those interactions, students can't have their learning validated. They don't know if they're going in the right direction. So they can't validate their progress against others. They don't know what they're studying is correct, what they're writing in essays is correct. The research they're doing is right. And they need feedback to be able to do this. And without that learning community, the opportunities for feedback are very limited. And as we know, the work by John Hattie over numerous years, but certainly his work in 2014, identifies feedback as an absolutely crucial element, a factor that hugely influences achievement. In fact, it was in the top 10. So we need this sense of community, of this validation. Now, because of this, there are some issues with distance learning delivery. There's difficulty and anxiety that people have with not only delivering online seminars, but also being part of them. To put your hand up in an online seminar and ask a question can be just as daunting and as scary to putting your hand up in a seminar, a live campus-based one, if you're not that kind of extrovert personality. So there are some difficulties with that, just getting the engagement there. Also, there's issues with engagements with videos, with online video content. And it tends to be this low engagement, this mythical 4 minutes of attention span is a problem with that. And as we've just I've recently mentioned, there's a lack of community, and because of this is an issue. Now, there are other inhibiting factors, such as time and life commitments that get in the way for people that are distance learning, across differing time zones. This can accentuate the issue by students being in different parts of the world, which makes online and live synchronous delivery very, very challenging. And those are all from a participant's perspective, but actually, as you'll no doubt be aware, to create high quality digital resources and online material is actually more time consuming than creating a face-to-face lecture or seminar. There are some elements around it. So in terms of the session today, in terms of the direction and the focus, really, what we'll be focusing on is that classroom community and how we develop that potentially at distance. So as I mentioned, research shows that validation of learning and a sense of community is essential for distance learning endeavours. We have to put this in place to develop what we've got. And research in 2002 by Rovo postulates that classroom community consists of 4 different dimensions, and they're listed there for spirit, trust, interaction, and learning. This is based on campus-based delivery. So to develop those, face-to-face, human-to-human, as we mentioned before, because of the opportunities for collaboration, interaction, and constant feedback, it's relatively straightforward. But actually, our distance learning classroom should be no different to the campus-based ones. So what we therefore need to do for a distance learning community to be established, conditions need to be established to foster these 4 elements. Therefore, our pedagogical approach needs to enable and facilitate these facets. So we must be able to develop spirit, trust, and an interaction within our learning. So how do we do this? So we need to develop, online relationships. And the only ways, or essentially the tools that we have with the current technology, the only real ways to do these are through online seminars and online discussion forums. And these are good vehicles to do this. And you may already use these. And I'm going to hopefully show you a structure or a framework of how we've helped put these together to facilitate learning. What you will find is that small groups and small group discussions are best. Today we have 50 odd participants. The opportunity, very much like a campus-based seminar for interaction there, is limited because of the numbers. Certainly some of the sessions that I've run previously, somewhere between 12 and 20 people is generally, from my perspective, optimal, because you've got the opportunity for discussion, but there's not too many people where individual voices are drowned out almost. So we need to manage these discussions and forums as best we can, but these relationships do take time to develop. Again, it's no different to campus-based relationships and rapport. So sometimes this can take over, certainly 1 semester, but sometimes 2 or 3. So there is no instant win or quick win with this. So does an online community, can we put it together for distance learning? Well, yes, we can. Shorey et al. In 2018 found that online quizzes, discussion forums, and reflection exercises dramatically improved and significantly improved module satisfaction and personal self-efficacy above any kind of passive, almost didactic online delivery. Jeong et al. In 2019, fairly recently, found that formative assessment allows that validation of progress. Yeah, for us to be able to give feedback, but as teaching staff, but also for peers to be able to give feedback and comment on formative work of contributions by individuals, improves emotional state, improves self-efficacy, and actually has an impact on the ultimate goal, the learning outcomes of the student. And what they also found is that if we link discussion forum interaction to assessment weighting, so if there's some way we can link it into our formal assessments, our summative assessments, this increases engagement even further. So there is opportunity for interaction through quizzes, through forums, online forums, to improve our emotional state, feeling of belonging, that identity with a community. Jerry in 2017, let me just move myself out of the way there, concurs with this as well. Yeah, the interactive elements, quizzes, multiple choice, those kind of things within videos and within digital delivery actually improves that engagement of videos by 22 and 25% respectively for what they class as short videos, sort of under 11 minutes, and for longer videos as well. So adding that opportunity for students to engage somehow, even if it is on their own, if they're doing this as a standalone piece of work, improves the learner experience. So how do we do these things? Like I mentioned earlier, there's certainly no right or wrong answer with any of this. And a lot of this is trial and error because maybe because of the COVID situation, this has been accelerated. But people are gradually finding their feet with this technology and this pedagogical approach to learning, because it is different. It has evolved over the last 5 or 10 years with technology being available. All I would say is, as with many things, variety is the spice of life. So, a single approach to how you deliver online materials and try to create that sense of community. You need a variety of options to keep people engaged. Not just for your standard, teaching pedagogical theories of learning, where we need to address and what's the word I'm looking for, and cater for people's delivery preferences and learning styles and those kind of things. But it helps massively with the online community side of things. And one of the ways to do this is to have a mixture of synchronous and asynchronous delivery. So stuff that is ready for learners to access at their convenience. We live in a society that is used to accessing things when they wish. When was the last time you looked at a TV guide and thought, right, I'm going to wait till 8 o'clock on a Friday night to sit down and watch X, Y, and Z? We don't do that anymore. Netflix, Amazon Prime, all of those kind of platforms. It is that kind of instant satisfaction, instant gratification world that we live in. So the use to being able to allow people to dip into materials when they like, as well as having some programmed in materials, is important from my point of view. So what I'd like to do then, the crux of the session really is to show you, to give you a guided tour, for want of a better phrase, of a structure that we use within the School of Education to deliver our online materials, which is certainly over the last 18 months has yielded much more positive feedback from learner surveys, and also anecdotal conversations from the students as well, and in kind of spontaneous feedback really in terms of creating that sense of community and for people to be involved. Now, the students that we have on there are volunteers to distance learning. They signed up for a distance learning course knowing what they were getting themselves into. So the engagement, I think we could probably, again, anecdotally say is naturally going to be higher than maybe some undergrad students at the moment that are, for the situation we're in, being forced to being part of an online community because they signed up for a campus-based delivery model. But actually, for me, the principle should be the same and should help increase that engagement and affinity with the program. So what I'd like to sort of show you really is one of our pages. So hopefully this should come up on the screen for you. So we use Moodle as a platform. There are other options and products available. There's benefits and limitations to them all. But the general structure that we work to is a fairly standard one and a systematic one. So at the beginning of the page, you have your standard information, welcome, module information, discussion forums, which I'll come back to in a little while, and assessment material. But then what we do is we work through the material, the topic, the subject content. Now we label them as topics, and we work through Moodle books to go through. And again, there's benefits and pitfalls to those. I know there's other platforms out there which offer different potential, but this is the one we have. So we follow those through. We generally tend to have a 10. Sorry, beg your pardon. There we go. A 10 topic sort of list within each module that we do, so that students know exactly how many they're going through and the elements are in there. In terms of modes of delivery, there is a variety of what we do, and I'm going to dip into these in just a second. Let me get back to this. So there's a variety of material. Of the 10, what we tend to have is 4 of the topics are a mixture of presented video and text, which I'll demonstrate a few in a second. The next 4, or not necessarily the next 4, but another 4 are a mixture of narrated video and text. And then we have 2 as online seminars, which are live for the students to dip into. And within each of these topics, within each of the Moodle books that we have, there are reading, discussion forum activities, quizzes, case studies. Yeah, we use LinkedIn Learning, which is quite helpful as just a sporadic thing, just to set scenes on some of the material, and some other external material, things like the TED Talks, the Khan Academy, etc., which are all useful and helpful. So if I show you one. So you have to bear me a second. This is I find WebEx a little bit clunky as we go. So if I show you one of the pages, you're going to have to forgive the gurning. One of the pitfalls of creating online videos and through YouTube that we do is there's only a selection of thumbnails that you can have. And a little bit of my soul dies every time I know that someone sees these. So you can see the interesting screen captures that they have of you as you go through. So yeah, just be aware of that. There's not a lot you can do. So in terms of the delivery, then we have, like I mentioned, 4 of the topics where there are a mixture of videos and written feedback. So just to give you an example of one of the pages, there's a video that we have here going through the content. So we deliver the information. There's some contextual information via text here, and then there's activities and readings for the students to do. So it's all linked in together. So when the students wish to, they can watch the videos. Hopefully this will play. I'm not sure how the sound will go. We tend to keep the videos fairly short, but I'll talk through that in a second. But we offer different elements and instructional points as we go. So if I just flick through some of these, so hopefully we offer some thoughts, some transitions as we go, and then the students can work through the written material and then contribute to the discussion forums. In terms of a good example of how we put together the discussion forums, after somebody's been part of a conversation or part of a video, to give you an example here, so the students work through the materials, and there's a discussion around which they can post to the forums if they wish, and a reading. What you'll notice here, and hopefully seeing the difference between the 2 videos, is the quality of the production, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to pause it there for a second and go back to my PowerPoint, if that's okay. Right. I'm going to go back to the original question, really. Why is there this mythical 4 minutes attention span for students when they're watching taught material, and that's no different for age groups, genders, social groups, nationalities. It tends to be this mythical 4 minutes. And for me, the main difference, the reason why people can sit down and watch a good quality documentary a TV program that catches their attention, is because of the quality of production. And now what that means is that professional editing can engage the viewers by capturing their attention. Now, what you'll notice is when you watch a film or a video, there's transitions all the time. Every sort of 6-7 seconds, the focus of the image changes. It's always moving. It's not just a single, you know, like I'm here now in this bottom corner, single focal point and someone talking. That single focus point, we do struggle to hold our attention with. That probably is 4 minutes at most. But when you watch a professionally edited video, they will engage a lot longer or film for it. In fact, you know, 2 hours, 2.5, 3 hours, maybe, yeah, we can watch feature films for. And the reason why that holds our attention is because of the transitions, the engagement with it. If I go back, apologies, let me just scroll this one down to that video. Apologies, I'm going to have to minimize this one. Just come out of that. There we go. If you have a look at the video here, I was fortunate enough to be able to utilize a member of staff who can create these kind of videos. So you'll notice that, you know, over that period of now, sort of 30 seconds, you know, there's headings coming up, there's a change of focus. I appreciate you can't hear the narrative there. I can assure you it's highly quality content, but you can see that the movement of the images, yeah, the change, the text that's coming up on screen, and that makes a difference. So it's certainly not perfect with what we've got there, but it will hold people's attention because of the change of movements. So in that 30 seconds, there was a good number of transitions, which can make all the difference. So. Like I mentioned, you do need to be able to create those high quality digital materials. Now, we do have online learning developers, OCDs across the university that can do that, and it's having the skill set to be able to do those, the post-editing elements. Now, some of it you can do your own. Certainly for the narrated PowerPoints, which I'll show you in a second, you can do them yourself. The retention rate for those, for the videos that I've done, are high. It's 80 to 90%. Because we place the videos on YouTube, we can see the Google Analytics for them. So for any length of video, I think the longest I've done is 14 minutes. Almost consistently, the view time, or the retention, as YouTube call it, is almost 90% in some cases. Most of the time it's sort of mid-80s. So they're watching a huge proportion of material. I think it's research by Jerry. When they look at theirs, their engagement is somewhere around 60%. So it's difficult to compare because obviously we haven't seen the videos that they created for the research for their study. But that transition and that professional element does increase the retention massively from students. Let me show you the online, narrated PowerPoints in terms of how they work as well. I produced this using Camtasia, and again, you can utilize this. It's fairly straightforward software. It takes a little while to get used to, but you can quite easily add in animations and changes. So all of this content here, again, I appreciate you can't hear the narrative, but the changes, the movements, the transitions as you go through help keep people's attention. As I go through, there's different videos, different headings you can put up, and within reason, it's quite easy to animate these videos. You see here that the image is moving slightly and slowly. Again, it just holds people's attention whilst you're giving information. It holds their focus. So the next time you watch a really good documentary, maybe on BBC4 or other channels are available, just be conscious of how they're doing the backgrounds, the images, especially the historical documentaries are very good at that. They have a painting or a mosaic or whatever, and the screen will move slightly as it's being narrated. So in the layout and the way we develop things, it's very much videos that are narrated, PowerPoints that are narrated as a mixture, as our kind of core, and then the So they're if you like, the delivery of information comes through from there. You know, your lecture side, the information, the basics, the foundations go via those mediums. And then what we do is to move people up to the higher order thinking skills, to move people into you know, analysis, evaluation, you know, above the kind of comprehension and knowledge side of things. That's where we pose the questions, and we have the forums and readings. So in terms of the forums that we have, again, to make things straightforward and simple for students, what we do is we link them to any activity or discussion that you put on the Moodle page. So again, if I show you an example, so as the students work through the videos, I'll give you a sort of quick run through from here. So yeah, the students will work through the Moodle book on the right hand side. So you have a selection of videos, just give them some information. Again, another wonderful gurning picture. A little bit, my soul's just died again. Moving forward, this one's not without me on it. So they work through the videos and the elements. Maybe the odd reading as they go through there as well. And then they'll come to a point where they have an activity to do. And there's a link there for the forum. So they click on that and they go into the forum. So the students can post and they can work through each other's. Now, this is a live unit actually, so it's been going just over a couple of weeks. And you can see there's what's that, a good sort of 7 or 8, 9 students that have discussed, and they're replying to each other as they go. So if we look at a policy here, we flick through, there's some details. So the students have done some wonderful research and answered the question. Tony's replied to that's right, Emily there. Yeah, so they're relating, they're collaborating, there's interaction with people's thoughts, and this enables them to validate their progress, so they know whether they're in the right path, whether they know whether they're going in the right direction, but also they know if they're not, and they can, you know, very simply and very easily dip into these Moodle forums and think, actually, yeah, that's given me a really good idea, or oh no, I was miles off there. So that validation of learning is really, really important. Let me back. Appreciate this is a lot of me giving information. Like I mentioned, there'll be opportunities for some questions and bits in the moment. I've seen that things have been flashing up, and I'll address those as we go. Just a couple more, really. There's an interactive element of this as well. Within Moodle, there's plenty of options and other elements that you can utilise. I tend to make the interactive tasks linked to the video. Now, you can link them within the videos if you like, but that's a little bit beyond my expertise at the moment. So let me just give you an example of an interactive video. What I'll try and do is this might sound a bit tinny, but I'm going to try and give you the sound for this one. So bear with me a second. So I've given them a little bit of a prompt, and then there's another video here. I could use a worksheet, I suppose, of this, and the students work through that. And then once they've had their go, they can work through here, and they'll have the different answers as we go. So there's an element of activity for those students to do as they go. And lastly, but not least, really, is the online seminars. I think these are a really important part of creating that sense of community, because it gives people the opportunity to come together as a group, as a cohort, really, and enable them to discuss and share information. Now, as I mentioned before, this can be a bit of a challenge if students are in different time zones across the world because of times, but also because of internet issues, those kind of things. So sometimes we certainly offer 2 sessions around our seminars to enable students to join in. There's no real difference in terms of the way we set up our online seminars as you do campus-based. But as an aside, Wolverton offers a really interesting framework as to how to structure online seminars, which I'll pop a reference list at the end. But that's worth having a look in terms of following that. Pretty much what we do on the MSc in education followed that program, that structure that they've given. So if I give you an example. So within the topic, within the module that we offer, there'll be 2 online seminars for 2 different topics. We give the students some details around when it's going to be. We tend to use Google Meet because we find it's quite intuitive and quite straightforward to use. What we do to see how many students we're going to have, we set up a Doodle survey beforehand, where you ask the students just to select a date which they can do. Hopefully it'll kick in. Here we go. So they can select which session they're going to jump into. So you've got a bit of an idea as to how many you're going to have in your session. And then they click to join whichever one on the day. The way we've structured them to help not necessarily the engagement, but the flow of the discussion really, is we've set a reading and then we have some prompts and questions to go really, which again is no different to how we may structure campus-based seminars anyway. But what we tend to do is almost take, in terms of facilitating the discussion and posting questions, because you don't have that the sort of physical cues that you get within a classroom-based environment or a seminar-based environment on the campus, where you can see whether someone is ready to answer or they're happy to. You don't quite get that on the video. We almost need to go back to, and we sort of do it as a bit of a joke really, kind of a primary school aspect. So what we do is we wait for people to ask and throw out questions. We throw out questions and either wait for someone to put their hand out to ask, which works quite well if you've got a system like with Google Meet, where you can see the videos of everyone, or we'll throw out a nominated question to someone, but with the caveat that there's no judgments made. If you're in a position where you can't answer that question, you just say no, I can't, and you throw it back. So it does take a little bit of juggling, and no doubt most of you will have been in that situation over the last few months, maybe with COVID. But it tends to work quite well as long as you give them a structure of, here's our reading, here's the questions, so they can prepare the material, to take away that anxiety of being put on the spot with peers that they might not have met before. That first time, the last thing you want to do is single someone out and make them feel inadequate or exposed really. So within the reading, within the seminars as well, we offer further reading for the students should they wish to take it further. Sorry, I've just seen one of the questions pop up from William there about visible. I find it hugely beneficial to have to see people, to see the visuals, which I'm struggling a little bit with the WebEx today, because when I present it takes my screen down to, and I can only see 4 videos. With other, I'm sure you can do it with WebEx, but with other platforms, you can see everyone across your tiles. Now, obviously, the more you have, the smaller people get, but you can, to some certain extent, start to take some visual cues from people as to whether they want to answer or as to whether they're actually thinking, no, that question's not for me really. Okay. So it's a bit whistle stop really in terms of creating a sense of community there, but certainly for us on the MSc program, that structure of online delivery in terms of videos, narrated PowerPoints or narrated videos to give people information, then the opportunity to discuss and validate their thoughts and work within discussion forums, complemented with a number of online seminars, tends to work really, really well with us. I've just seen another question pop up. So what I'm going to do is not share my screen, if that's all right, for a second, and see if I can get back to the WebEx page to answer some of those questions. So, wonderful. Okay, so Andy, you might need to guide me slightly here. Let me just get the chat up. Okay. Okay.
Thanks for that. That is a brilliant session. Thank you. Right. Got lots of comments coming. Can you see the comments, Richard, or would you like me to read them out? You all right there?
Yeah, I'm all right there. If everyone's okay, I'll start at the top. Was it Anthony at 10, 19 and work down. Is that if everyone?
Absolutely. And then people keep chipping in as you see fit, colleagues, please.
So I'm just going to move my screen around just so I can have a better view. Okay, wonderful. Anthony writes, small groups for discussion seminars work best, but any tips for linking these together to ensure members of the group interact with each other? That's a really good point, actually. I've found that they almost do that organically. It's an interesting one. It's almost like seating children in class. I come from a teaching background, so yeah. Do you group students or pupils in different groups and then change them around each week when you teach them to develop that rapport and relationship with other people, or do you let people do it naturally or organically, and do you let them find their own groups and actually they feel more comfortable in those? It's a real dichotomy, really. For me, I tend to let it happen organically because my students are mature learners, generally professionals working in the education industry as step heads. What they've tended to do at the end of the seminars we've had is a lot of them I've kind of prompted and said, look, yeah, one of the key things about the course you're on at the moment is the wonderful flavour you can get from the eclectic mix of people from all over the world that you're working with. You know, in terms of networking, this is a wonderful opportunity for you. And I prompt them kind of through official channels, i.e., do it through the Moodle forums, post, because we have question and answer forums sort of outside of the topics, but for the modules, to say, look, if anyone wants to group together and become a sort of friendship group, I suppose, or professional friendship group, then do so. And I know a few students have done that because they've set up a few WhatsApp groups, not that we're involved in, but they are, and they start to create their own community outside. And then they tend to find that they interact with each other outside of the seminars, which I think works really well. The difficulty I have with students all over the world, it's the time zones. So mixing the groups tends to be a bit of a challenge. But that kind of works for us. Okay, Anthony's the next one. On-campus students are split in small groups. Okay, yeah, makes sense. Can students take and record notes during sessions in Moodle? That's yes, in terms of for the recorded material. Whether they can save that into Moodle itself, I'm not sure is the honest answer. I think they tend to do that via their own sort of mediums, whether that's the good old-fashioned notebook and pen and paper, or Word or Google Docs or whatever it may be. In terms of them answering questions in the Moodle, in terms of the forum, yes, they capture that there. But like I showed for one of the interactive tasks, I generally don't tend to ask them to input it into Moodle. They can do that themselves and whatever works best for them. Charlie, to everyone, could you offer some examples of the kind of embedded formats assessments that work well? You refer to tutoring feedback. How do you capture feedback? Okay, if I can answer question 2 from Charlie at 10:24. In terms of peer feedback in the virtual setting, the forums capture that themselves in those written forums. In terms of the online seminars that we have, we don't tend to capture those interactions, for want of a better description. There are options around peer assessments, formative peer assessments, which certainly from my background as a teacher work very, very powerful with students. It's not something I've implemented as part of any distance learning delivery at the moment, but I think it could be powerful. In terms of embedded formative assessments that we've used, the Moodle quizzes tend to be quite useful, certainly for that module that I've showed up there. We haven't used them in those, but because we use them quite a lot in the next module and the one previously. You can set it up with the OCDs where students can't move on from one topic to the next until they've completed a formative quiz or assessment, which works quite well. Again, variety is important. I wouldn't necessarily do that for every module, but for one or two, I think it works quite nicely. One from Sue, who is a member of staff who helped you create the high quality video? I don't want to give you individual people's names because they might be swamped with custom. Sue, it's one of the OCDs that we work with as part of our interactions, if that makes sense. I hate to be covert, but if you speak to your OCDs across your faculties and departments, they'll be able to point you in the right direction there. I've used a number because of a bit of a cross-university role that I have. And like everything, some people are stronger with the post-editing side of things. I'm a little bit self-taught with Camtasia. So there's some things I can and can't do, but it's just worth having a play. It does take time, but it's worth speaking to the OCDs and speaking to individual people that can do things. I mean, if you go to the faculty OCDs, they can record the green screen behind you, but you almost need to be your own director. So you almost need to say, right, can I have 2 cameras set up? I'm going to speak a little bit into this one here, a little bit into that one there, and almost having your own mind when you want the transitions, when you want images coming in, which I think is one of the reasons why we only tend to have short videos, because the logistics of producing them take a lot of time. In terms of software, I use Camtasia. I asked for my head of department for an upgraded license rather than the standard one we get from Apps Anywhere, because it just offers a few features. I find it very intuitive, very easy to use. I know Adobe, is it Professional Pro? Something like that, offers exactly the same thing, really. But there's so much out there on the market, it's just worth having a try. But I'd certainly say Camtasia is very good and very intuitive, and go from there. Tips on the technology kit at home. I would say in terms of the videos, if you take, I produce a script because I found it very difficult just to do things off the cuff. The moment you set yourself up and the red light goes on and record, I can't remember my own name, let alone what I'm supposed to be saying. So I tend to have a bit of paper that sits underneath the camera lens, and I'll read off the script that I've prepared, which isn't great, but it's what Ant and Dec do, so I'm happy with that. The recording doesn't take long, to put together the material actually is the short bit. But yeah, if you gave yourself an hour for half an hour's worth of recording, that's plenty, absolutely loads. But it's the post editing. I would say for every minute of good quality editing you're going to do, it takes about 45 minutes to an hour when you start off. You gradually get faster, but I think you find that the better you get with it and the more things you start to play with, the more things you put in place, which means they take longer naturally. But I would say, yeah, for every minute of video, if you allowed an hour all in, sound a bit like a builder doing an estimate here. That, as a rule of thumb, I would say that works. Next one down at 1028. I have an iPad Pro and Apple Pencil. That's interactive whiteboard. Okay, so Andy's running a workshop on the iPad stuff on Monday. Yeah, that'd be worth getting to. I must admit, I don't tend to. I've never used Apple, but I know that the creative members of staff do. So I think that's the best way of doing it. So I'm just rolling through. So Frank's asked, are we allowed access to this Moodle page? The short answer is potentially. I'd need to request it from our IT team, our online course developers within the department. But if anyone wants to email me after the session, I'm more than happy to answer questions or where possible give you access to Moodle pages.
Can I just intervene there? We are doing a lot of work, as you probably know. There's a big online learning push coming for colleagues probably in about a couple of weeks' time, where we are looking for exemplar kind of like modules. Richard, we could, if there's a possibility, we might be able to clone that module and put it as a kind of like a copy, so people could actually come in and look at it without interrupting the work that you may need to do on it. Might that be possible?
Yeah, more than happy for that. More than happy for that. I mean, like I mentioned, it's not it's not an immaculate, design, and it's not doesn't fit for everyone. But yeah, more than happy for people to use it as
that would be really, really helpful. Thank you.
No worries. Moving on to the next one. So from William about the does it make a difference if you're visible or not? For online seminars, absolutely, I would say so. In terms of videos of yourself delivering information, again, I think it's a bit of variety. I think to build that relationship and rapport with students, to be able to physically see you, I think is important, because we're human beings, it's a natural instinct for us. So I think it does make a difference, but it doesn't have to be all the time. And again, if you go back to good quality documentaries that you see, the presenter will be on it 30, 40, 50% of the time maybe. So I think that as long as you've got a mixture, that's important. In terms of GDPR issues around students being recorded, I certainly don't record the online seminars, just because of that. I know Google asks you if you've got permission for people to be recorded if you record it, and I'm sure it would be fine. But I think for me, it's also the engagement. There's a bit of me that doesn't want students to know that there's a recording available for them to look at later. And I may be thinking, and I may be a bit stereotypical here, but maybe for undergrads that might think, I just won't bother interacting, I'll watch it later. Because I think that detracts from the quality of the conversation and discussion and debate. So I don't, almost aside from GDPR as well, I don't record seminars just to encourage engagement. We give them enough opportunities to get involved through different time zones, so that's fine. Lucy, in terms of platform for online seminars, everyone has their own preferences. A lot of my colleagues use Slack, which is very similar to Zoom and Google Meet and WebEx. I think it's whatever you prefer. They're all much of a muchness, but like anything, the format's slightly different. Somebody's put the link to Wolvertine's work, which is wonderful. Do you use breakout groups at all? Question from Sarah. I haven't so far. No, I know a number of colleagues of mine do for their seminars with their undergrads, and certainly with the last few weeks and months with COVID. I know you can set that up with WebEx. I don't know if you can set that up with Zoom and with Google Meet. So I mean, that's the dichotomy around which platform do you use, really. I certainly haven't used breakout groups as I've gone, but I know they have been used within our department, within our School of Education and Sociology, and they've been very well received. So I think it's worth trying. Pedagogically, there's a little bit more in terms of the logistics, because you'd have to work out who's going where and not the invites necessarily, but pop them out into the different groups. But I don't think, from what I've heard from my colleagues, I don't think it's particularly challenging or taxing. James Smith recommends Camtasia as well. I quite agree. So from Charlie, I can see how your mature learners and senior leadership group contribute. Yeah, it's. I feel your pain in terms of engagement, in a face-to-face environment, Charlie. In terms of undergrad students, looking at the research, and for the life of me, I can't remember the authors, but I read something a few months ago that if you get 50% engagement in an online seminar, you've done well, which I think is good for rule of thumb. It is tricky. I think it's like anything, any kind of teaching. You'll have students that are conscientious, have a good work ethic, are proactive, that will become engaged. Others won't. I think as time goes by and potentially the world moves more to a virtual classroom environment, I think it will become more natural for people to be involved, but I think that's going to take time. I would say you stall out early. So I'd get an online seminar in right at the beginning of the year when the students are still keen, and Freshers Week is not a distant memory. Excuse me. So that the students they still have that motivation to learn at the moment. They haven't completely fallen into the undergrad trap. So if you can get them early and show them that it's worthwhile, I think you would capture more. Premiere Pro, Craig mentions Premiere Pro, which is definitely useful, and resources. Any tips on me? Okay, so from James at 10:48, any tips on making viewing, interacting with materials compulsory in ensuring engagement? Yes, I mean, you'd have to go for your associate head academic in terms of changes to your module, but the research has shown that if you link interactions to the forums, interactions to seminars with assessment, summative assessment weighting, then obviously engagement increases. I would certainly only keep that as a small percentage of the weighting, because the difficulty is how do you market? How do you, the dangers of online discussion and debate almost becoming a bit of a not an academic piece is a challenge. So I would certainly keep it as small an element as possible. But even if you look around, it's the contribution. So it's, I don't know, 5% of the weighting of the module is that students have engaged and commented on somebody else's post. So it's almost an arbitrary, yes, they've had a go. Within reason, the quality of it isn't an issue, but have they contributed? And offer them a small weighting for that, because that in turn would feed into the other elements of assessment, because almost by proxy they'd be learning, they'd be interacting with the materials. Okay, so from William at 10:50, we still have a timetable in mind. Sessions a timetable 13 times because of the normal campus space. Are you suggesting we break the habit so we can offer occasional seminars so people can sign up for them? That's an interesting one. I mean, certainly for UK-based students, and if you're thinking about undergrads, I think structure works well, and where it's almost unknown territory, isn't it? I mean, could we say that seminars on a Wednesday night at 7 o'clock are more appropriate for students at the current moment, where some of them might have taken part-time work in supermarkets during the day, or would they be working more in the evenings? In terms of timetable, it's a difficult one. You'd have to know your students, know your cohort, know generally what they would prefer. Certainly for my students, it has to be evenings, and for them, depending on where they are time zone wise. So the seminars could be midday, could be 4 o'clock, could be 8 o'clock in the evening. It all just depends, really. I wouldn't mind.
If I may, sorry, just because it's one of the discussions we're having in DCQE at the moment. I think there's going to be guidance around some of this kind of like coming, but it's this notion of if we're going online, and you may have seen Graham's email this morning saying that stuff that was face-to-face will be online. If we're sticking to a timetable structure, it's perhaps within that timetable how you're using that time. So if you are flipping the sessions around and students are doing stuff more remotely, it may be you're looking at how you use that timetable slot to perhaps break the students down and bring them in for this group-to-group relational stuff. A really interesting article, I think, in either THE or The Guardian this week, which really captures what Rich has been talking about this morning about the relation element, and the face-to-face is going to be still just as important about what we actually deliver as well. So there's resources coming from DCQE and TEL very shortly that will provide some additional guidance around this. So you'll see that within the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's very much a moving feast, isn't it, over the next few weeks and months, not just for us, but for education in general, really. I mean, I've got 2 young lads in the schools trying to put things in place for them is a challenge. And again, like I mentioned before, for me, there's no right or wrong. And I think, Andy, that's great. If the university have got a direction for us to follow and some guidance for us to utilize, and that makes absolute sense. And it's certainly in terms of when you timetable things and when we utilize these different resources, I think it's going to be a movable feast, and I think we're going to learn a lot over the next few weeks and months, and could be some interesting research that can go on. I know there's people in my department that are keen to look at things. I appreciate that's been quite whistle stop and very quick, actually. Are there any other questions? Okay, so asynchronous activities from different modules. Sorry, is there a weekly limit for different modules or time limits? Okay, that's interesting. I think, again, it just depends on, and forgive me, Andy, if I'm going, this is just my perception rather than there might be some university guidance in terms of what works best for students. But I would certainly say I would almost follow the program you have at the moment. So, if you think about breaking down the lecture time that you would have had as your kind of videos, narrated PowerPoints as a rough rule of thumb, and then any seminars, tutorial workshops, practicals, labs, etc., as the discussion-based elements, which are more synchronous. I would, as a general rule of thumb, I'd look to mirror what the original program was with how you would do it now. I wouldn't necessarily, like with anything, any teaching activities, resource and techniques, I wouldn't just focus on a single one. I think there needs to be a good mix of all, like I mentioned before. So as a rule of thumb, I would look to model what you have existing with the timetable Canvas space for lectures and seminars, etc. at the moment, and see how it goes. If the students respond more to the materials that are online for them to access at their convenience, then maybe shift a little bit more towards that. But if students prefer the live delivery and the interaction, then go that way.
Richard, I think you've nailed that on the head. It's exactly what I would have said. I think the most important thing is start with what you've got. There is a tendency at the moment to think you've got to reinvent everything again, and you don't. Take a session, think about what it looks like on a weekly basis, and then think to yourself, right, how can I deliver elements of this online? And what you'll find is some elements are perhaps easier to deliver online, so you can focus on that as perhaps a synchronous element. Some other bits aren't, and then you might flip that over. Like I said, there's a lot of guidance on this about coming out very. I'm working on a lot of guides to active blended learning at the moment, which effectively we're working on. So again, just watch your space. But I think Richard's hit the nail on the head. Think about what you're doing already. But the other analogy I use when we're talking about active blended learning is a bit like the old-fashioned sweetie shop, and it's a pick and mix approach. And you think about what you want to achieve in a session, and then you're using different tools and techniques to deliver that across a module. So it's not, I think the most important thing with online delivery, it's not necessarily the same thing every week. There's a nice blend emerging that keeps that level of engagement going. And the structure of Richard's pages with the icons, and that is something like that is coming, but it's really clear and it helps engage because they feel confident and it's really clear what they need to be doing. So lots of really good practice we're talking about today and that you've actually seen.
I'm conscious of time, and I don't know if these these meetings cut out 11 or if people look at other bits, but I'm happy just to answer the last couple of questions that have just come through about video editing. I must admit, there's some really good, I mean, the world is going this way, but YouTube and Camtasia themselves do some really good tutorials to go through how to edit materials as you go. So I would certainly say that's a really good point of call as a start point in terms of how to capture and edit videos. Once you've got the software up and running, it's quite intuitive. And I know it's easy to say, but not always so easy to do. But the guidance through Camtasia is quite useful. I'm happy to pop up the bibliography as well. If that's, I'll just pop that on screen now, if I can. Sorry, I need to. Let me just share my screen. Hopefully you should see the references there. I'm more than happy to ping those through actually. If Andy's got a distribution Dropbox or email at the end so people can see. The Wolverton one at the bottom is the key one in terms of, just move is the key one in terms of the framework for online discussion. It's quite useful. I think she comes from a business teaching background in HE, which is quite good. And Branch Muller reading as well is quite useful in terms of that sense of community. Interesting question from James there about subtitles for the videos. YouTube will do that for you. Sometimes it misses the odd word here or there, but if you embed your videos into YouTube to upload them onto Moodle, which I find works quite well because the videos are quite big, so popping them in Moodle on its own is a bit of a logistical nightmare. The captions, they come up with captions, or if you like me, I write the script before I record them. I just upload that as a PDF in the bottom. But I think certainly for international students and students with English as a second language, it's important. Yeah, because we've all got slightly different dialects and accents, etc. So trying to piece together the odd word here or there can be a struggle for students and for us. So yeah, it's always worth popping in place for them. Nick, so yeah, well, I don't disagree. I think the film study and directing is a skill set we're going to need to go forward in the digital world. I think the challenge we have is well, with the evolution of our young people's skills, is that 16, 17-year-olds are creating videos, or in fact 14, 15, 16-year-olds are creating videos themselves all the time, which are, and just using their phones and the editing software on there, which is of reasonable quality. So their expectations are so much higher now, and it's almost a skill set we need to retrospectively learn. I mean, it's something, yeah, my idea of being creative was changing the font on a Word document to italic. You know, that was as good as I got when I started teaching. But the expectation has changed, and I think we need to adapt to that. I know the university of in the throes of signing a contract with distance learning provider that will help us create that, because it is a very difficult skill set to master. Question from Anthony in terms of the upload videos. No, my YouTube account is the one linked to my UOP email address. So as part of that there. So yeah, it's not a private personal one. What I do is when you upload them, if you set them to unlisted, so no one can search to find them, but then you embed the link into your Moodle page so that when they click on the link, it works. So yeah, that keeps things private. Like I mentioned, it's interesting enough having yourself watched on videos it is by your students, let alone any Tom, Dick and Harry on the internet. So yeah, just have them, make sure you click it as unlisted, and then people can access it via the link you place in Moodle, but nowhere else. Perfect. I hope that kind of helps, or if there's any other questions, if anyone wants to throw them out. My email is just richard.poole@port.ac.uk, so more than happy to answer any questions that people have, or point people in the direction that I went. I mean, most of the things that I've learned are on the back of other people's expertise, and for me, a good teacher is a reflective thief. We reflect on what we do, but also we see some of the good things that other people do and go, oh, actually, how do I do that? And obviously credit them for it, but still what they do and the methods they use, because it's the only way. Individual people can't have all the answers, so it's certainly worth seeing what other people do across the uni and other establishments, and most people are quite amicable, and we'll happily help and give you the time of day. Which I've only been at university 18 months, and I've got to say that almost everyone is welcoming and happy to help and support, which makes all the difference. Was there, just before I suppose we finished, was there anything anyone wanted me to flash up on the screen again, or any questions on how any of the page was structured?
Richard, can I possibly very selfish and ask one at the very end? First of all, can I thank everybody for the comments? There's lots of really good stuff. Just to say, I can't say too much at this point, but there is an awful lot of guidance coming within the next week about stuff that's going to be put in place for September. So please bear with us. It is coming. It's imminent. We are just putting it together. But once it's released, there's a lot of stuff. We're also hoping to run a little learning and teaching festival in July, based on lots of small size, bite-sized workshops. So any suggestions or things you'd like to put into that, if anybody would like to do something for us as well, that would be great. But Richard, my final question, one of the things we had a chat about this morning is we've got colleagues that in big lecture theatres have large groups. And it comes back to this issue of, when I think somebody raised it about, well, how do you put them into groups at the beginning? And somebody raised this, if you've got a group of 100, do you try and put them in the same groups and then set up the rooms for them? Or do you say, there's the group, and you set those groups perhaps using the group function in Moodle, and then let them go off and create their own meets in Google? What do you think the best route is to that? Because it seems to be a common starting point for a lot of people, because they're teaching large groups.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. I can't offer a thought from experience and personal trial and error, but I would certainly, especially in the initial phases, and especially in September, because the rapport and relationships for individual students might not necessarily have been forged and fostered, I would direct that. I would rather than, it's almost like, picking teams in primary school when people are playing tag or football or whatever. I think you let the students pick themselves, because you potentially you put yourself in a situation where there's a good number of people that are sat there on their own who don't know anyone and find it challenging to forge those relationships in those groups. And that term, in terms of that relationship, that trust, that spirit that Rovani talks about, it would almost crush that right from the beginning. So I would certainly for the bigger groups from the outset, or certainly initially with those kind of breakout groups, I would set those so that the students don't feel isolated or exposed or vulnerable. You're saying, right, here's your group of 12, go. Here's your group of 12, go. And everyone's in the same boat then. So they're potentially all unfamiliar with each other, and they have that opportunity to foster groups, rather than the odd student being left out almost because they don't have the opportunity or don't have the friendship group at that moment in time, especially if it's distance learning, to go forward. So yeah, I would always, definitely from the beginning, you pick the groups and the students go off in those initially, and then you can see how it adapts. If groups forge over, like I mentioned, those relationships, that sense of community takes a teaching block or two at least, then you can start to say, right, now you can start to pick groups that you're going off in. But it'd be interesting to see how that pans out. Yeah, it's a difficult one, definitely.
I think, like you say, we're very much I think we're a little bit more advanced than Second and C, but it really is an experiential curve we're all on. But I think the ideas and the enthusiasm, and I have to say the work that people have put in recently is just absolutely amazing. I celebrate my first anniversary at Portsmouth next week, and I think the work is just absolutely amazing. It's been a real privilege to actually see people that are doing some really good stuff. So Richard, can I just say thanks? That was, given the conversations I've been having with my team this week about the stuff we're doing to support transition, this has been an incredibly timely presentation, because it really does articulate and help contextualize some of the things that we've been talking about for our planning. So thank you very much. Colleagues, this will be recorded. It will be on YouTube, and we will post it up, because I think it's one that a lot of people need to see, because it covers so much ground and has been very helpful.
Yeah, thanks very much, Andy, and yeah, thanks for everyone's contributions. And if anyone has questions in the future, just drop me a line. More than happy to help where I can.
Lucy, that's very kind of you. That means an awful lot. We're working really hard, and I don't know about you, but I'm getting a little bit pissed off of all these newspaper comments about saying universities are closed, when I think university colleagues are working actually harder than ever. So we're here to support. Like I said, Richard very kindly offered as a sounding board. If anybody needs anything, you're very welcome to email DCQE, or please come straight to me directly. And we are here to help people. Please be aspirational. Please be creative. We are here to help you do something really special for September. So, think outside the box, and we can make things happen between us. So I will leave it there. So again, thanks everybody for coming. I really appreciate it. Thanks again. And thank you very much. See you soon.
Cheers. Take care.